Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Friday of Breaking Into Cybersecurity. This is Chris Foulon, your host and creator, along with Renee Small. She's not here, but we have an amazing guest on today, Mr. Paul Cummings. He's going to share his background shortly. But for the beginning, if this is your first time here and you're seeing us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button. That way you can see us the next time we pop up. If you are listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, don't forget to subscribe and share with all your friends and family. And then again, joining us straight from LinkedIn, don't forget to follow myself, follow Paul, connect with us, and that way we can have a great networking. So to introduce our guest today, I've been working with him and helping contribute to the veteran community. And I've been trying to get him on forever. I couldn't believe it took this long, but here we finally have Mr. Paul Cummings. He's coming from a military background and he is now a security researcher, but the path here was anything but normal. So let's have Paul share his story. So Paul, give us a little bit of background. What was your military career like?
So my background started back in 2001 when I joined the Navy. The recruiter, when I went to the office, was really trying to battle the idea of what I wanted to do. I didn't know. I was bored, so I just wanted to do something. Mm-hmm. So he asked me what I knew about computers, and I was like, well, I know how to put an AOL disk in and get on Yahoo. He's like, cool, you're going to be in IT. I was like, okay. So, that was the beginning of my path. I went to Great Lakes back when the ITA school was still there, and, learned how to be a radio communicator and information technologist. I've started, at the mailroom level where, I was a help desk technician and computer repairman, and I ended my career as information system security manager, after 20 years. In the time that, I worked for the Navy, I had the privilege of setting up a cyber protection team, a first of its kind, and it really, really opened my eyes to the amount of fluencies that military members can bring into the sector. So I helped create a training pipeline for 38 members. We were fully operational a year ahead of schedule, and in compliments of how well we were doing, we were assigned 3 real-time large-scale incident responses, across from the West Coast to the East Coast. So, fast forward into when I started getting into real management roles in the military, obviously you lose a lot of hands-on. So, as I prepared my journey to civilian, the amount of resources that are out there, the boot camps, the academies, it was just overwhelming. I felt like, full on imposter syndrome. Sure, I've done this for 20 years, but, in the service, we don't stay at one place longer than 3 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. So, I might have done cybersecurity C&D manager role back in 2014 to 2016. But again, that was so long ago. Now I'm fighting that the imposter syndrome that I don't know what I think I know. Okay. So it came up a lot when I was doing a lot of my interviewing, and it's one of those things where I'm glad that we linked up and you were able to really bring it home. That for the fact that we don't have to start entry level if you have a good foundational and hands-on experience.
Well, let's talk about that. So for those in the comments, we have an Eventbrite link, And this is one of the first ways that Paul and I started collaborating. Paul was setting up meetups for veterans who are transitioning out of the military to come together to talk and to share career advice and welcome those from the community to share advice with them. So there's another event today, this afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern. That's the Eventbrite link in the comments. The next link in the comments is for Boots to Books, which is another amazing resource. They help with providing resources like study material, testing certifications, and so much more. But with Paul, you're putting together a virtual hiring fair in September. So that's the second link, the Boots to Books V Fairs. And that's for military veterans, first responders, and what was the other category that you added?
Military transitioning, veterans, military spouses, first responders, and military dependents.
Perfect. So if you're in any of those categories, make sure you sign up for the virtual career fairs. And for everyone else, you're welcome to join on the Eventbrites. So Paul, let's dig into your career a little bit. What are some of the military roles that you did where you learned, because you mentioned you did many roles over your long tenure, where you learned some of the IT skills that you use now that others might not think about as they're transitioning out, that they actually had skills that they could take to the private sector?
A huge one, and this goes for pretty much anybody, it doesn't matter if you're military or not, is the level of open source intelligence research. So my first duty station was Iceland. We were still on Windows NT back then. And we migrated to Windows 2000 upon my leaving. So, as they were getting ready to roll Windows 2000 out, the birth of the green team, orange team, blue team, red team construct came out for information assurance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was curious. There's not a whole lot to do in Iceland but party and enjoy 6 months of daylight, 6 months of nighttime. So being curious, I linked up with our information assurance manager and really helped drive a doctrine that she was trying to build for Iceland. Mm-hmm. So that was my real first step into the InfoSec, was actually at my first tour. But when I started to really look at it, I think around the time that I was stationed in Bahrain is when I started looking at it holistically. I was a network operations supervisor. I helped control the gig for the entire Fifth Fleet area responsibility. So IP services for the ships and ground mobile forces. And, a part of our purview was vulnerability management, containing a vulnerability scanner, firewalls, block hole IP lists, really things that, when you start researching what these black hole IP lists are blocking, you're like, man, it's the curiosity has led me down to the fact that I can't believe there's sites that do this.
Yeah.
So I think my biggest push though was I left Bahrain and went to New Orleans as a ComSec manager. During my time there, it was very short actually, because within my first 7 months, I was called to go to Iraq. Mm-hmm. I went to Iraq and I was a biometrics data collection advisor. So I had moved from a computer repairman to help desk to going on a ship being help desk, moving into a Linux administrator, going into a NOC supervisor dealing with routers and switches and IP gateways and satellite connections, to ComSec, to now I'm doing biometrics. So I was like, man, the amount of training that I got just for that was amazing. And it really showed a proof of concept when you hear a lot of the biohacking, because we've seen it firsthand, with the ability to scrape fingerprints, manipulate retina and stuff like that. So, I did a lot of that with kicking indoors, got back, and the Navy was like, hey, you went to Iraq for a year and a half. What can we do to help you become an IT again and not a knuckle dragger? So I was like, well, I would like to get a course. So at that time, it was 2009. They allowed me to choose 2 courses, and one of them happened to be ethical hacking. Back when licensed pen testing was still a part of the curriculum. So that was fun. It was definitely turned into a friendly challenge. But after doing that, it really changed my mindset. I followed on to be an immediate superior in charge at my next duty station, where at any given time I had 25 destroyers and frigates as an information assurance manager. So all the knowledge that I've gained as biometrics and doing stuff like the ethical hacking course, it really helped me excel to the fact that our destroyer squadron was ahead of the curve. It got to the point where we became the proving ground where ships would come to our Devron.
Can you describe that for everyone listening? What that
term? A Devron is a destroyer squadron.
Okay.
You get a Commodore that is assigned to X amount of ships. Traditionally, it was 10, but as budgets come in and new ships are built or ships are getting ready to decommission or be sold off, they get aligned to another Devron. So it just so happens that ours was leading the way on the cybersecurity, stage 1, stage 2 inspections, and pre-in-serve inspections, that we became the pigeonhole for a lot of these ships and new CEOs to come to learn information assurance and cyber.
Nice.
We have Aaron in the audience, which is awesome. He was a huge part of my success. At that time, I was only at E6.
Mm-hmm.
So I was moderating, mentoring officers and commanding officers and, chiefs, senior chiefs, master chiefs, to the point where I became like a waterfront asset. We started holding waterfront symposiums, getting up to speed on the various things, because, on a ship, even now, you look at the fact that everybody's going cloud. There's certain critical infrastructures, maritime being one of them, that you're always going to have on premise. So just like any company, you go 1-to-1 and the baseline changes.
Yeah.
But that was the biggest thing. It led me to get selected to pre-commission Cyber Protection Team 553 out of San Diego. And then from there is really when it grew. We were active in Carnegie Mellon's cyber range.
Nice.
They opened it up to us to where we could train on it for free. Sent a bunch of people out to do some Idaho National Labs critical infrastructure and SCADA certifications and courses.
Let me hold you up there for a second. So for those that don't understand what a cyber range is, can you describe the concept?
So yeah, a cyber range is essentially a gamified environment to where you have the ability to do a proof of concept of your skills. The way Carnegie Mellon set theirs up is you actually have the entire color spectrum: your white team, your blue team, your green team, etc. To where, when you look at the way U.S. Cybercom set up the cyber protection teams, it is a squad model where you have a hardening team that goes out and does your assessments and they do hardening. You have your blue team that comes out and does your audits, and and vulnerability assessments. You have your red team where you can couple in some of the blue folks to do threat hunting on active IR. So what Carnegie Mellon did on the cyber range was, really built a full-on, large-scale, real-time environment where every CPT that was being established,
what's a CPT?
the competing cyber protection team,
Okay.
where we could actually compete against each other and train with each other. Just like one analyst might go down a rabbit hole differently, you never know. Talking to another analyst on another team, man, I didn't think of that. That's actually quicker. Gets me to the same answer, right? But that was a huge win. It was thankful to another first class that made that happen. So when we started reaching out for the other types of trainings, we were able to target, threat emulation trainings, Route 9B courses, send a couple people to Splunk, the SCADA courses, I mentioned with, Idaho National Labs.
Describe SCADA for those that might not know it.
So SCADA, so when you think of a critical infrastructure, even like a bank, that teller that launches that tube, right, that you submit your money to, or you pull a draft from, it goes to the teller. That's actually on a SCADA network. And essentially it's an older type of computer system. Some still run DOS, but it's a computer that's just built to really make cogs turn. You see it a lot in dams with shutters. You see it in chem labs with their filtration. You plug in your numbers and it tells this PLC, this programmable logic card, to turn 25 degrees or shut. Same thing with HVAC with your ACs and stuff like that. And there we go. There's Mr. McQuiggan right there.
So for those listening, Mr. McQuiggan sent in a comment. SCADA, supervisory control and data acquisition systems, how they control and monitor power plants, manufacturing, etc. I always like to have, anytime someone mentions an acronym, for them to describe it, for those that are new and breaking in and they might not understand what that acronym means. So thank you, James, for submitting that, and thanks for Paul for describing it. So after you get the cyber range training, you get the Idaho National Labs training, where did you go from there?
So from there, I had to exit my CPT orders in San Diego to go on Humanitarian Orders. My dad was having chronic heart failure, so the Navy gave me orders to go home and take care of him. It was at that point in my life where I had already, made it past the 10-year mark. I re-enlisted for my last go around, and I was scared because it was Humanitarian Orders is one of those things where if it doesn't get solved, they have the ability to give you the boot. So I ended up in Jacksonville for a year while I was taking care of my dad. Ended up in a security management office taking care of background checks and security clearances and stuff. And lo and behold, as my dad was getting better and we were able to help him, my wife was diagnosed with 5 ailments, all within the same week. And to couple it off, for those that are Navy in here, this all happened right before chief season. So chief season is a grueling process, very time intensive. And, I was finding myself not being able to meet a lot of the chief season goals because, I was off taking care of, my wife or my dad. And then I couple it in with my son's my son is also special needs, severely handicapped, nonverbal. So, between 2016 to 2019, I was averaging 6 to 7 appointments a week.
Wow.
So with me not knowing where I was going to end up and me also being super frugal, I would spend my time in waiting rooms, Googling free resources.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I want to get some free training, do something while I'm not doing something.
Yeah.
So I just kept it going. Knocked out a few certifications, low hanging fruit like Scrum fundamentals, my Lean Six Sigma yellow belt, and really took off. It wasn't until 2019 when I finally, came off my humanitarian orders that I started having health issues, to where as soon as I got to a ship, I had emergency surgery and I got removed from the ship.
Oh, wow.
So now it's the battle of crap. They're going to medically separate me, and I have 18 months to go to hit retirement. But luckily, I was able to get into my retirement package in time to where a medical board wasn't an option. So during that time that I was taking care of my own health issues, we had I was at a fleet readiness center, so very big aviation community. I was the only IT that they've ever had. Mm-hmm. And everybody that came up to the help desk were all, aviation folks, like mechanics, fuel specialists, quality assurance specialists. So, I found a knack for training them up to get them up to speed on what they were doing, because, as I started my transition, it seems like everybody wants to transition into IT and cyber. I don't know if they're trying to chase the dollar amount, which is very bad, because you can chase a dollar amount till you're blue in the face. It doesn't mean you're going to be happy.
Yeah.
So, I started hopping in to do various things, with my home lab and stuff like that, to the point where, finally October hit and I started my full on transition pipeline.
Well, let's talk about that process for those that might not be aware.
Whew. Wow. So that's actually how we met. So in the military, you go through a DoD mandated transition assistance program. They call it TAPS or they call it TGPS, but it's really to get you set up and start thinking of, your insurance, your finances, your next job, and stuff like that. So, one of the biggest courses was resume. Well, the resumes were awesome. I'm not going to lie. A lot of folks that I delivered to personally, they really liked the format, but it was a format that you would have to hand off in a live environment. Mm-hmm. It was not applicant tracking system capable. So between October and January, I had automatic rejections. So, I was getting furious because I had 43 iterations of a resume by then. And it really just came down to format. It was, it was one of those things where it was like, man, I didn't know it was that strenuous.
Well, let's talk about the iteration process. So why did you do the iteration process?
So the iteration process was because I was targeting specific roles. Mm-hmm. So when I researched the companies that I wanted to work for, I really dissected the roles, got with the people that worked there. I tried to target between 2 to 3 individuals for that company in that specific role. Mm-hmm. To really understand, okay, so this job post says this, what was your experience and what led you to where you're at? In the process of doing that, I was getting internal referrals, which was awesome. Bypassing that good old robot. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was 40 some odd targeted resumes for 40 different companies. that all got bounced. The only one that didn't bounce was Royal Caribbean. I got hooked on Royal Caribbean probably November timeframe. So right before all the holidays. So that was hands down one of the longest processes. It was also my first real interviews. And the interview process found out that, even though I got better for each interview with them, I was coming off robotic. And that's a big reason why I started the Veterans Breaking Into IT Cybersecurity. And really talking to hiring managers and interview teams to let them know military service members aren't taught to ask questions. We, during an interview, we have our sailor of the quarter, airman of the quarter boards. It's like the employee of the month type deal, where we get in front of a panel and they ask us questions. We give them the most correct answer that we can give, and we move on. So I was finding that as a challenge after January when I started getting interviews. I interviewed for one company where, they were excited that I was a, computer network defense manager at one point in my life. And when they were asking me questions, I was answering them right off the bat. But they're like, okay, well, you're now a MISP, MSSP, and you have to explain this to a client. It's like, oh, crap. So now I got to go backwards and tell you how I got my answer. Well, that's another thing with the military, right? So we get lost in thought because we are trying to deliver the most correct answer. And, again, in the military, you don't ask for help. You can ask for it. Whether or not you're going to get it depends on, the camaraderie you have with your team. So, my first few interviews came off robotic. I was actually in the top 5 candidates for a cybersecurity investigative role for Royal Caribbean for up until February, when finally a candidate got their JIAC G pin, and that put them over. And I was like, dang it. So, but then it just turned into a battle where, I went through a total of 39 interviews between February and April before I finally got my job. And that's 39 companies, not 39 separate interviews.
Yeah.
So, you can think of the different ones where they have 5 or 6 freaking interviews for no reason. It became really cumbersome. And I think that's when you finally seen that post where I was getting fed up. And, I'm completely honest with you. The day you reached out, I had a Home Depot application filled out. I was ready to call it quits because I'm like, what did they want from me?
Yeah.
And, I don't want to see people struggle. We have folks that are planning their transition 2-3 years out. I want to be able to get to them before that. That way they can see the worth that they have.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the things that we talked about in our session. You're ready to give up. You're ready to sign up to Home Depot to be in a retail store, it sounds like. Let's talk about what changed based on our conversation for you.
It was really the biggest thing that stuck out and still resonates with me is the fact that, I've lived a life. In that life, I've gained soft skills and hard skills. And that might come off intimidating to recruiters when I was applying for entry-level positions, especially when, the first thing they see on my resume is, oh, you're an ISSM right now. You should be getting ready to retire. Well, I am retiring. But it was the how to explain myself and really get ahead of when that topic comes up. And when that gets to that panel interview, and 5 people are brought into it, and that's their first time ever seeing your resume, it's a battle. And sadly, ageism exists. But as soon as I really wrapped my head around the fact that, man, I really do know a lot of stuff, and I'm easily to, I can get hands-on wherever I go. I'm a continuous learner, so I'm always active, always engaged. That I was like, okay, I'm going to start honing in on some of these senior level positions. Had a couple great leads with Dell SecureWorks. It was just the fact that I've never done ransomware. So that was a huge turnoff. They don't like the fact in the DoD environment, we just say, oh, new hard drive, here you go. We don't play that game. Hopefully you didn't save your stuff on a C drive. But that was a big push, was really understanding the whole self-value that I did bring to the table. And it turned into, it wasn't necessarily that the companies were rejecting me, because I had, I got started getting good feedback. It was I'm a believer in the whole cyber construct, and it's one of those things where I felt like I needed to be fluent on everything. So preparing for some of these interviews with these senior roles, I was bombing them because I was still thinking junior, because I did have 3-4 months where I was targeting entry level positions. But going through your CPF masterclass, I was honored that you let me pilot it. It was phenomenal. I keep that pocket guide in my phone all the time, and it really helps me help those that are finding the same issue. The second breakaway or takeaway that I feel was important was, really looking at the roles, fine tuning exactly what roles that you want to do. And we talk about the 53 roles in cyber and the 14 in IT. Some of these roles you might not necessarily be able to obtain it now, but you can easily obtain it in a 2 to 5 year time span. Finding those KSAs, those knowledge, skills, and abilities that you could get off another role that is the ones that you're missing off of your dream goal. I don't know. It was just luck. I talked to a headhunter back in March. I was too far out from my actual military retirement. And then, a mutual friend, Alex Rhodes, had reached out to him and ended up getting a position and said, "Hey, you should talk to this guy." I was like, "I know him." So I reached out to him, and lo and behold, we were able to get on the same company. And that led me to cybersecurity research as an ISSE, doing research and development. So now I literally get to eat the cake too.
Nice.
One day I'm doing red team, one day I'm doing blue team, one day I'm doing audit. So, it really worked out to where, I took that solid break, like you said, don't get burnt out. So I took a month off, complete distraction free, and bam, there it was. 2 interviews. Interview with the headhunter, and then interviewed with the COO of Stevenson Technologies Corporation, and the rest is history.
Nice. So it sounds like you did a couple of things. One, you focused on your transferable skills. Mm-hmm. You focused on the roles that you really wanted to target. You weren't just taking a shotgun approach. And then you were leveraging your network that ultimately helped you get where you're going. Wow. Um, let's talk about some of those resources we mentioned earlier, and I'm going to share them in the comments again. There's that Eventbrite that you are doing later today at 4 p.m. So for that, please explain who we're looking to invite.
So veterans breaking into IT cybersecurity started off as veterans, but as me and Chris really started to connect, we wanted to adopt everybody. So anybody that's aspiring to become an IT or cybersecurity professional, or already in the IT cyberspace that is looking to expand their career, are absolutely welcome. We started it as a resource fair, and now we're to a roundtable fireside where I get 10 to 12 industry professionals from executive all the way down to help desk to really come out and help you obtain these goals. Whether it is, hey, I know a person, or hey, why are you trying to get that certification? There's not a real return on investment. If you get this cert for that role. We have people like James Azar, yourself, Augie Tinsdale, Alex Rose, Joseph J. Bear. It's really a great mix of professionals. We all think of the whole cyber human aspect where, again, you have transferable skills. We just have to unlock them to get you in that thought process. So, we go away with hoping that everybody connects with everybody that's on there so we can expand each other's network. And then really ask those hard questions that, they're scared to ask. When I first asked James to join, even me as somebody that's been, in executive leadership, was scared to talk to a CISO in the real world. But then I was like, boom, oh yeah, James was fully on board.
Yeah.
It was that point was like, man, so the C-suite is highly available and approachable. You just have to know how to do it.
So he's referencing Mr. James Azar, who's on our sister podcast, Cyber Hub and CISO Talk, and also joins us on CISO Thursdays on Breaking Into Cybersecurity. The next link that we wanted to talk about was the Boots to Books virtual career fair on Friday in September. Do you want to talk about that one?
Absolutely. So this actually became one of those times where two military vets had insomnia. A mutual friend we know, Jeremiah Parker, and I were up till 3 o'clock my time, 2 o'clock his time, talking about the ridiculousness of the hiring process and the ATS system, and not understanding what companies are using what version and stuff like that. So, it ended up being a 3-hour conversation where we were finally like, I wonder if we can just make a career fair. Screw a career fair. Let's try to create a hiring fair. Let's get senior recruiters and hiring managers to participate. So we brought the idea up to Peter Klein from Boots to Books, who happened to let us alpha Mr. Michael Kaplan's Phase 2 Advantage curriculum. And we're like, hey, so what are your thoughts on a job fair? And then Peter Klein was like, look, I'm 100%. We'll sponsor it.
Nice.
So within 2 days, we had a job fair. So, from then it's been reaching out to recruiters, really explaining what we're looking at. We want to get people past the ATS. We want them getting past the general recruiter, and really start talking to, the senior recruiters, the hiring managers, and into their panel. So essentially, for some companies, bypassing 3 or 4 interviews. And surprisingly, the companies that agreed, we're 100% on board with it. I couldn't get the whale. I was trying to get Disney and ESPN and Netflix, but they were looking for more physical security and senior pen testers that I don't think we can provide.
Well, let's make a call out for individuals from those companies that are willing to join. Feel free to reach out to myself or Mr. Paul Cummings. Wow, we've gone 10 minutes over our half hour already. So if you had to summarize everything we talked about today in one piece of advice for someone looking to break into IT or cybersecurity, military or not, what would that be?
I would say understand the roles. Use the NICE framework for cybersecurity to understand the different roles in the jobs and really do some soul searching to figure out if that's the role for you. That way you can build your 2-year, 5-year, and 7-year plan to obtain those goals. And then network, absolutely network. You never know who's going to know your name.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons that we actually do this podcast is to help share amazing stories like yours today. Again, for those that are on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button. That way you see us the next time you come up. For those on LinkedIn, ensure that you follow us, follow both Paul and myself. And then for those of you listening via podcast, subscribe to the podcast and share it with all your friends and family. Thanks so much for joining us today, Paul, and have a great rest of your day.
All right, you as well. Thank you for having me.